TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
This week's TellyCast is a special show looking at the story behind the new Irvine Welsh drama Crime, which is out today on BritBox. Coming up later in the show is an on-set chat I had with Irving and Buccaneer Media's Richard Tulk-Hart a few weeks ago. They produced the show along with Tony Wood. But first, I'm delighted to welcome a bona fide Hollywood star to TellyCast, Crime's leading actor and executive producer, Dougray Scott. Hi, Dougray. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much, Justin. Very happy to be here.
Well, thank you for coming along. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So we're going to talk about the process of how Crime came together and your new production company venture a little later in the show. But first of all, I just wanted to take a look back at your acting career. Did you come from an acting family originally?
That's not a straightforward answer to that question. My father, along with his brother, my Uncle Tom, way back in the 50s, were in a theatre company called the Glasgow Unity Theatre, which was an amateur production company. And they did quite famous productions like, Ina Lama Stewart's Men Should Weep. They did an adaptation of Mice and Men, the Gorbel story. And so that was kind of in the background, not really omnipresent, but it was certainly something that I was kind of aware of. And my father's venture into acting sort of lasted not very long, about 6 years. My uncle, I think, apparently was a terrific actor. But that wasn't really what got me into acting. I was kind of like every other kid from where I was brought up in Fife, was obsessed with football. And in fact, my dad had been a footballer for Queen's Park in Glasgow. So we're talking in 1936 here. I mean, my dad was born in 1918, and so he was quite old when I was born. But I was obsessed with football, but was never good enough to be a footballer. So I was quite an introverted kid in many respects from the age of 11 onwards, and sort of did a musical at school and really enjoyed the experience of being on stage. And then there was a drama club opened, and they did a Tennessee Williams play called Suddenly Last Summer. And I did that play, and I just kind of felt quite enjoyed, pretending to be other people. It was a way to express yourself emotionally that you weren't really able to do in normal life. And the idea of creating a character just fascinated me. And then I read a lot of Arthur Miller. I read The Crucible. I read Death of a Salesman. My dad ended up being a salesman. So when I read that, I kind of thought, I then got really plainly and very explicitly understood the power of writing in terms of what, how that could connect different nations across the globe. And then saw the potential of drama and what it could do for one and people and society. And so then about 14, I thought, I need to be an actor. And of course, where I was brought up, it was very few, I don't know if there was anyone. I think Ken Hutchison, the Scottish actor, he sort of was born in Leslie in Fife, and I wasn't really aware. Anyway, it was something that certainly wasn't encouraged. It was like my career officer was like, when I was 16, he was like, no, you need to get an apprenticeship in the dockyards, join the army, electrician, plumber, all that kind of thing. It was a typical working class upbringing. I kind of just knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I went to do a foundation course, and then I ended up, even then they were like, you can't be an actor, not you. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I will be. Anyway, so I auditioned and got into Welsh College and went there. And I had an amazing 3 years at Welsh College, which actually is where my son went as well, Gabriel, who's now 23. And so he went to the same college. And I had 3 of the best years of my life there. Absolutely loved it. I love Wales. Wales is a, phenomenal country. And that, I guess, is my journey. And I guess I was a soldier. I did in the Scottish Theatre Company's production of In Satire with Three Estates in 1984 or 5, I think, at the Edinburgh Festival. And then after college, got a play. My first TV job was in Taggart in Glasgow, directed by Graham Theakston, and it was called Nest of Vipers. and I think it won a Royal Society TV award or something like that. Anyway, it was a really good production about this young guy who was a necrophile. Lovely subject. And so that was kind of, and that's how I started. And then I sort of did plays and loved the theatre. I never thought about anything other than getting the opportunity to act, because to me it was really important to be able to communicate, emotionally, intellectually, through the power of writing. And it was, I wouldn't say it's therapy for me, but in some ways it was an expression that I never really had in my, day-to-day life. And so it became kind of oxygen for me, and was fascinated by movies and was obsessed with Scorsese and De Niro and Pacino and Brando, Alec Guinness, Ingrid Bergman, Meryl Streep, Maggie Smith, Judi Dench, all these actors I just was in awe of, and just, they were amazing, blew me away. And so, I just wanted a job. I just wanted to be able to act. And, TV and film came after that. Not because I wasn't searching for it. It just was, it was a job. So yeah, I'll do that. And that's kind of how I got started.
So you say you went to Welsh College.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what were the opportunities in Scotland like for a young actor back then? I mean, was it a case of you had to move away to move forward?
Well, no, you didn't have to. There was 2 drama colleges in Scotland. There was one in Edinburgh, Queen Margaret College, and then there was one in the Royal Scottish Academy. And I just wanted to have a different experience. I wanted to get out of Scotland because I was just curious. And not because I didn't like Scotland. I love Scotland, but I wanted to just see a different part of the world. And so, I got a grant for Wales, and so that's where I ended up. And I'm really happy I went there. I don't wish I went anywhere else. That was 3 amazing years for me.
What was your first big break then that you look back on now and think that, that set the course for your career?
Interestingly, it wasn't what you wouldn't say. It wasn't a film or anything like that. It was actually a play that I did called, and it's a long title, this Unidentified Human Remains and the True Nature of Love, which was a Canadian play by Brad Fraser, I think, directed by Ian Brown at the Traverse Theatre. I loved Ian Brown. I mean, he's such a great director. And it was a production at the Traverse, and it was a great part, playing this sort of gay kind of guy whose best friend turns out to be a serial killer. And it was a flamboyant part, and it was very different from me, and it was just great to play, and I just loved that time at the Traverse in Scotland. It was such a kind of, a hub of creativity, and the Traverse to me was synonymous with Scottish theatre, and it was exciting to be there. Anyway, so the play was very successful, and then it transferred to Hampstead in London. And then a lot of people came to see it. And so there was a bit of like, oh, who's this guy? What does that even mean? And then I sort of started to get into meetings and stuff like that. And then I did TV. I remember I did The Crow Road as well with Gavin Miller. Brian Elsley adapted the Ian Banks novel, and that was really good. That went really well, and I was playing the stand-up comic in that. Again, very different from me. My friend Bradley Adams produced it. That kind of worked, and so from there I remember auditioning for Twin Town, and got the part. And Twin Town, when that came out, it sort of struck a chord with people, and from that, I think things began to happen. People saw it in America, and flown over to LA to screen test for various things. I guess Ever After was a big production that, because I remember having an audition for Ever After, and the director and everyone was like, no, he's not right for this. He's played a drug-addled copper in Twin Town. He's completely wrong for Prince Charming. But I remember going to LA, and I got a part in Deep Impact. Literally got off the plane and got that part. Anyway, so when I was there, my agent set me up to meet Drew Barrymore, and she said, "You just got to charm her." So I remember meeting Drew Barrymore and just thinking, this is it. I've got to make an impression. So we just actually clicked and we got on really well. And she was like to the producers, no, I want to see him. And they were like, well, we've already seen him and he's not right. And she's like, no, he's right. He's great. So they set up a screen test in London, and they just told me, because it was evident that it was working, that the chemistry was great and we were great together. And the director was like, don't know what you did, kid, but you got it. Come on. You little motherfucker. I told you no, and now I'm saying yes. So I was determined. I was pretty dogged. And, for all my insecurities, which there are many, there's something I have, and I don't know where it comes from, but I have a determination that just keeps on going, and that sort of stood me in good stead with crime, because that was a long journey to get this made. But both me and Tony Wood at Buccaneer, we were both like, nah, we're going to do this. We don't know how we're going to get it made, but we're going to get it made.
When it comes to you as an actor and what motivates you, you've worked across some of the movie industry's biggest franchises and TV industry, Desperate Housewives, Mission Impossible, etc. What ambitions do you still have unfulfilled in TV and cinema?
I want to do some more plays. I'd really love to do an Arthur Miller play. TV, I'd like to do... for example, there's a novelist called William McIlvanney, Scottish novelist, who I really want to adapt his work for, television. And so I guess my overall ambition is to develop Scottish writing. And not exclusively, not because that's all I want to do. And it's not a xenophobic decision at all. I love England I live in, and I love England, and that's not about that. It's just that I just know that I have an affinity for Scotland, and I understand having been brought up there. So I know when I read a novel that's set in Scotland, I know, innately what that means. I have an explicit understanding of the communication that's happening between the writer and the reader, and it's just part of me. And so, I feel that it's kind of similar to, an American actor or producer going, this guy from New York, I understand this voice. It's within me. I have an inherent understanding of it. And that's the same for me when I read James Kelman or William McIlvanney or Irvine Welsh or someone like Jenny Fagan, who's just written this amazing novel called Luckenbooth, or Robin Jenkins, who wrote The Cone Gatherers and Poverty Castle, Robert Louis Stevenson, there's so many. Douglas Stewart, who wrote Shuggie Bain. Listen, we have an incredible well of talent in Scotland, and I'm not saying that we're better than anyone else. I'm just saying that I understand it probably better because it's part of my culture, part of my DNA, and so I want to be part of that journey of perhaps lending my support to the talent that exists in Scotland. And if I can help produce some more productions, that are inherently Scottish, then that would fulfill a long time ambition of mine.
So a lot of people say that, we're in the golden age of drama production, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, all of these players, all the studios now creating their own streaming services, and there's never been so much competition for great literature turned into TV drama. Why do you think it's taken so long for an Irvine Welsh novel, or in this case, an original story based around the novel, to be made for TV?
Well, first of all, I think people are a bit scared of him, not scared of him, but perhaps not quite understand how to sell his sort of work. And after Trainspotting, I think there was an expectation that, a lot of his books would be adapted. And I think he's had some other of his books adapted, for cinema, and other people have adapted it his work for TV, but this obviously is the first time that he's adapted one of his own works for television, and I think he's very difficult to get right. He's a unique voice. He's not easy to get right, and that's because he's so unique and so, I think, flamboyantly, literary in a sense. And I think people have tried before. I mean, listen, it took me. I had this novel 10 years ago, and then only when I teamed up with Tony Wood at Buccaneer and Richard Tulk-Hart that it began to get momentum. Obviously, taking it to Polly Hill, but I think the language probably scares a lot of broadcasters, thinking, how can we, broadcast this? But I think being behind a paywall helps you in that respect, because you don't have license to say whatever you want, but at least then you can tell the story in the vernacular, and it becomes more of an authentic representation. And the stories are dark, trying to sell a story about a child who's been sexually abused and murdered is, not easy. And especially when he doesn't shy away from it. He confronts it head on. And so this story, encompasses everything: mental health, drug abuse, murder, paedophilia, poverty, racism, homophobia. It's the whole shebang, and it's funny as well. So it's difficult to have people to encapsulate, because you can't really put Irvine in a box. He's unique. So I think that hopefully, I hope that this will be fuel for us to do other of Irvine's novels and adapt them, of which they are in the works, like The Blade Artist, which our company's going to do with Bobby.
That's Robert Carlyle.
Bobby Carlyle. I always call him Bobby. Robert Carlyle, and The Sex Life of Siamese Twins as well. Yeah, so I think that a long answer to your question of why is it difficult to get Irvine's and why is it taking so long, part of me doesn't know, but all I know is that it can be done, and we've done it.
Must be, to a certain sense, you coming full circle. This has been a long time. This is what, 10 years?
10 years for me, yeah, because I flew to Dublin 10 years ago, just after I'd done Father and Son, to try and find something to do with those guys that I'd done Father and Son with, Brian and Michael, and then we ended up looking at crime, and we all loved it, but nothing happened with it. Couldn't do it. And it sort of lost momentum. And then when I met Tony 5 years ago, he was a huge fan of Irvine, and together we started to develop it. And Tony's brilliant because he's much more sort of intelligent than I am. I'm more of I'm bright, but he's brilliant at the eye, the objective eye, in many respects. And me and him together worked very, very well as a team. And and we got there. And Irvine and Dean Kavanagh, who's Irvine's writing partner, they did just a brilliant job, because it's kind of an origin story of crime. The novel is set in Miami mostly, and Edinburgh. So we concentrated on the flashbacks, so then Irvine and Dean had to elaborate, expand, and kind of invent a lot of stuff that wasn't in the novel, and they did it brilliantly, because it seems like, this must have been an earlier novel that then you know what I mean? So it was quite brilliant what they did with it.
And there's an amazing crew as well, isn't there? James Strong as director as well has really brought something.
James Strong came on early, yeah. James came on, and he was an exec on it as well, so he was involved in the development. And Richard Tulk-Hart, obviously, at Buccaneer, and then we brought David Blair in, and he produced the first three and directed the last three, and he did a fantastic job. So we ended up with a really, really good team, a fantastic cast of actors as well. Ken Stott, Angela Griffin, Joanna van der Helm, Jamie Sivis, and John Sim. yeah, an amazing bunch of actors.
So you're in just about every scene, Dougray, in Crime. And we got to also remember that this was produced in Scotland, in lockdown. Tell us about your character in Crime and what it was like to portray this very interesting individual.
Lennox is, a very sort of troubled, fractured, emotionally unstable, unpredictable man who had a childhood that was marked by an incident that happened when he was 11, and he was sexually abused, and it kind of determined how he was going to lead out the rest of his life in many respects. He became a cop in order to find the people that abused him, and so when you meet him in the story, he's a man who has a foot in both camps of the past and in the future of policing, and you can tell he's a man who sort of operates on the edge. He can have a laugh and a joke, but as soon as the story kicks off, as soon as the young girl goes missing at the beginning, he's immediately instinctively thinks it is connected to other cases in the past, to which another man has been, he thinks, wrongly convicted. So he thinks the whole thing now with this girl, Brittany Hamill, going missing is connected to these other cases. He's an avenging angel. He's a voice for the vulnerable in society. He understands the hypocrisy of policing and how it protects some people but not others, how money talks, how class is an issue, where it should be just, the bare bones of the law in principle, but in actuality that's not the case. And so he's fueled by a burning desire to really protect, help, and find justice for people like Angela Hamill, who's lost her daughter. But he's also a man who's an addict and who uses drugs and alcohol, who's, when you meet him at the beginning, he's in recovery and he's, goes to meetings and stuff. And so he struggles with that. And of course, with this case of this missing girl and trying to find the serial killer, his past is colliding with his present, and it's like two freight trains coming, and you just know there's going to be a massive collision at some point. And in order to he tries to stave it off, but he also tries to encourage it, because part of what makes him good at his job is the vulnerability that the past brings to him, and the rawness that it provides energy for his motivating factors in finding this killer. So he's a complex character who, is attracted to the darkness in his life because he thinks it helps him be a better copper. And of course, his life starts to unravel with drink and drugs throughout the course of the series. It's his coping mechanism, because while it provides a portal into the darkness, it also provides some sort of coping strategy mechanism for him as well. So I lived that for like 4 months.
Yeah.
It ended up being like a 4-month shoot. Yeah. So in answer to your question, I was there. I was in it for that length. If you've spent that much time preparing, researching, developing a story to try and bring it to the screen, the last thing you want to do is kind of just dip your toe in the water. No, you take all your clothes off and you jump head first into the deep end, into the fucking freezing cold water, and you go, this is it for 4 months. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, at least I died trying. And that was my attitude towards it. I didn't want to shirk my responsibility, A, as a producer, but B, as the lead actor. And I just, so if you don't like it, fine. If you like it, great. But I was determined that I wasn't going to leave anything behind, It was full throttle, really. And that's not to say that it's not I'm not screaming at the camera. I'm not. It's subtle in many respects, the production. But what I mean is that I didn't leave any stone unturned in terms of the preparation, which is kind of what I do with everything, really. I mean, I have a very Scottish work ethic. I'm not lazy in that respect, and I really love the research anyway, the preparation. So by the time, and I was, even while I was filming, I was watching documentaries about child killers and people like Robert Black and Nielsen, and it's fucking dark, man, but it's like that's who Ray Lennox is, and that's what he needs, that oxygen in order to breathe. And so for me it was like, I don't want to leave it behind, I want to stay in it, and that's kind of what produced this character, really.
Yeah, well, it's a remarkable performance. I always wonder, have never been an actor, I look in awe at people who are able to master their craft in such a way. I mean, how do you bring yourself out of this sort of character, having immersed yourself in this story on set for 4 months, but obviously previous to that, this is something that's very personal to you and as also a career ambition. How do you pull yourself out of it? And now I know you're an exec producer on this, so it doesn't just stop when you walk away from the set on the last day.
No, it doesn't. It just, well, I mean, listen, you do. You just have to. I mean, I guess therapy, therapy and golf. I think you just have to, at some point, just cut yourself off from it, and you have to, really make a determined effort to not think about it anymore, because it's quite dark. And as much as I want to do another series of that, I'd love to. You have to just leave it behind in order to move on. But yeah, I mean, you become obsessed about it, for sure you do, which is kind of necessary, I think, for something like this. But yeah, I mean, not to sound too wanky about it and actory about it, but then once you stopped after a while, although I was connected to it for, from mid-August when we finished to recently, which is when we're doing the post-production, the editing, and so you look at cuts and you're still connected to it. And now I've seen it, I don't need to watch it again. Yeah. I've seen it a lot.
Your story of the week, it has to be the launch of Buccaneer Scotland, the TV industry story of the week for you. So tell us about what the ambitions are for Buccaneer Scotland. I mean, you touched on it earlier on, just talking about, this wide range of untapped literary talent in Scotland. What's the mission for Buccaneer Scotland?
I think it's to promote, writing that's inherently Scottish, and that, because I always thought that when people looked at Scottish writing and adapting Scottish novels or telling Scottish stories, that they always kind of felt, well, it's very colloquial and it has to really just appeal to a small amount of people, it's Scottish people. And I always thought, no, it doesn't. Our stories travel throughout the world. I mean, look at Robert Louis Stevenson. That's a really Scottish story. And yet it's one of the most famous novels on the planet, probably adapted more times than anything else. And I always felt that we should not that I'm saying Scottish novelists do, but I think other people outside, when they were trying to perhaps adapt or work on Scottish productions, always felt, well, it has to be, it's not a very big audience because it's very Scottish. Scottish means Scotland, and only they're going to get it. And I just think the themes that we explore in Scotland and the stories that we have to tell are universal and connect with, in the same way as Arthur Miller connected with me as a 14-year-old boy in Fife, sitting in my council house and reading on my bed and thinking about my dad. Our stories, like Laidlaw, McIlvanney's Laidlaw, Robin Jenkins, the Corn Gatherers, Jenny Fagan's Luckenbooth, Irvine Welsh, Train Spotting. These stories resonate, connect with, excite, grab the attention of many people throughout the globe. And I think we have to be proud of that and explore that and rejoice in that. The fact that we have, stories that deserve to be heard everywhere throughout the planet. And I think that, because I spoke about it before, I think that my upbringing in Scotland, and I was brought up in Fife, but I spent a heck of a lot of time in Glasgow because my parents were from Glasgow, and we would spend weekends and summer holidays, and so that became part of my experience of growing up in Scotland and Glasgow. And when I read McIlvanney or James Kelman, those memories come flooding back, and my understanding of these characters and the stories that have been told, I'm just so strongly connected with. And so, whether it is a novel, whether it's an original story, we have a strong original talent pool in Scotland, and I want to be able to help promote that. And by setting up a production company, Buccaneer Scotland, I think that, not because other people are doing a bad job, they're not. There's they're wonderful producers that work out of Scotland, but more is better. And I think we just want to be part of that unit that promotes Scottish writing, because we have an amazing amount of talent. And I'm not, as I said before, in any way, shape or form xenophobic. I love England. It's got great stories of its own to tell, of which I've been part of telling. But I, at this point in my life, I just want to focus on producing stories from my home country. I'll work away. I'll always work away, but ultimately, we will attempt to expand the Scottish voice.
I think, we talked about all these platforms that are launching all around the world. And obviously, Netflix has been going for a while, but all the other new players, they've really internationalized local stories to a remarkable degree. I mean, You've got Scandi Noir. You've got this South Korean cultural wave that's been happening for the last couple of years. We've seen Normal People, Irish story, which was global hit in lockdown. So there's nothing stopping Scotland having its own global cultural moment.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's been productions that have come out of Scotland that have done very well. Outlander obviously is a kind of its own genre, and that's great. That's fantastic. People love it. People watch it. But there's a lot more about Scotland to be explored. And Shetland was great with Dougie Henshall, who's brilliant. We have heavy literary hitters in Scotland, and those people, those women and men, deserve to be promoted and celebrated and given help to, they exist anyway in literary circles, these novelists, these writers. But an adaptation then becomes, it's like a hybrid, isn't it? It's a novel, but it's also a TV, or it's also a film, when you adapt something. So it sort of morphs into something else. And so you'll get people who don't necessarily want I read books all the time. Love reading, but not everybody does. So then they'll watch a TV show. So at least the communication or the voice that the writer has is being communicated to a different audience. And I think that, of course, TV and film is such a global language. Scottish is a great traveller. It just is incredibly attractive. Whether it's a hard-hitting story about poverty in Glasgow, alcoholism with Kelman, or whether it's stories of levity and Luckenbooth, which is like being in a fever dream. The possibilities are endless, I think. And I think that once you decide to do something, then I think you go, God, there's this and there's that, and there's that singer, she's amazing, and let's put her in this, or there's a great poet, She's amazing. They're amazing. He's fantastic. That novel, what about that novel? That would be great. Maybe we can update this. And once I think that you're concentrated in a room full of people who think, okay, so what else can we do? And we already have projects that we're adapting or attempting to, and getting the rights to. Once you concentrate those minds in a room, then I think you realise there's a lot that you can do.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the very best with Buccaneer Scotland, Dougray.
Thank you.
It sounds like a brilliant business plan. I've got to say, it's like, why has no one ever done it before? But
well, no, I think there are production companies that exist in Scotland, but I mean, I think that for me, this is the beginning of it, and it's not just the way we'll have an office and we'll talk about how we can sell these stories to, networks, and whether it's Amazon, Netflix, Paramount Plus, Disney, BritBox. It's not really, that's just the beginning. I think that what I'd like to do is to expand it further and, bring productions into Scotland as well. Not just my own, but Northern Ireland have it. They have these studios in Northern Ireland. England has these studios. I think Scotland deserves really good film studios. So I think that's an area that is interesting to explore as well. We have great infrastructure, and we also have locations that are the best on the planet. Let's face it.
Dougray, we have a regular couple of slots on the show, which is Hero of the Week and then who or what you're going to tell to get in the bin. So first of all, who's your hero of the week?
My hero of the week. But this is not the story. This is just my hero. My hero of the week has got to be Steve Clarke, isn't it? The manager of Scotland, because we beat Moldova 2-0 on Friday away from home. Patterson scored a fantastic goal. And listen, we are been the underdogs, and we've been, I guess, the butt of many people's jokes for years and years, not having qualified for the World Cup since '98 in France. But we had a decent run at the Euros, and I don't know, I was just looking at it and I was so proud of the team and so happy for us as a nation because, we have a shot. We're not qualified. We're not there yet, but I think Steve Clarke really has utilised the talent. And listen, we're a small country, but he has done incredibly well. And it's not easy, going up against these teams. I know people say, well, it's only Moldova, but, it's away from home, and we needed the 3 points in order to get into the playoffs, and we've done it. And now, of course, we have a game tonight against Denmark at home at Hampden. And, if we get a draw against them, then we'll get a home draw in the playoffs, which starts as a semi-final and a final. So I'm a huge football fan.
Yeah. Now, you're a Hibs fan, aren't you?
Yeah,
I'm not going to do the
yeah.
Succession thing where it's Hibs or Hearts and then getting those two mixed up. But Irvine's also a Hibs fan, right?
Yeah. And then he wrote Ray Lennox as a Hearts fan, so go figure. The perversion, that is extraordinary. So I have to recite off these, like Ernie Winchester, one of the heroes for Hearts. And I'm like, Irvine, what have you done? Why have you done this? Anyway, playing a Hearts fan, tough.
Yeah. But
anyway, there you go. Big Hibs fan. Actually going up to the semi-final on the 21st. We've got playing Rangers in the semi-final.
All right.
Cup, so I haven't been to a game for such a long time because of the pandemic and everything. So I'm really looking forward to that. But Steve Clarke is my hero.
All right. Excellent. Okay. And then who or what are you telling to get in the bin, Dougray?
Yorkshire Cricket Club in the bin. I mean, they're systemic racism over the years. And it's not like it was a secret. Everybody knew that Yorkshire was probably one of the most racist, cricket clubs. Not just the players, but the fans, the non-white fans who were getting bananas thrown at them, pigs' heads thrown at them. And they just haven't addressed it. It's been there, and they thought they would get away with it. And, those brave players who, came out and spoke about their experiences of, being racially abused while there were players there. It's kind of unforgivable, really, isn't it? I mean, how that happened, is beyond me. I mean, how they can get away with it. I just think that it's,
As a Yorkshireman, Dougray,
it's
and as a
wrong.
big cricket fan, as having enjoyed some of the most amazing sports occasions ever, like the Ben Stokes miracle at Headingley and a couple of years ago, it's very painful to see this happening. And I think that it just seems to me that the hierarchy of this club have just been completely disconnected to anybody that goes to watch a sporting event, and it's just bizarre. I think there's a lot of people who support cricket and live in Yorkshire are ashamed of what's gone on, and hopefully we can sort of break it down and build it back better.
Listen, it's not everyone, but I think that what I think about it is this, is that if you hear people making racist remarks in an environment where you're supposed to be a team and supportive of one another, and you say nothing, that's as bad almost as making the remark yourself. Because these poor kids were 19, young, vulnerable, and they're getting that outside in their normal lives, people being racist. The last thing they want is when they're going to their work is to get it in as well. And they're supposed to give their all for their team. Yeah. It's just so messed up and wrong. And listen, racism exists, everywhere in society, and we all have to make a collective effort to eradicate it. But, it seems to have been so prolific at Yorkshire Cricket Club. And listen, let me tell you something. I love cricket. Don't tell anyone. I'm a massive England cricket fan, right? Weirdly, bizarrely, perversely, because when I was a kid and I was 8, I used to play cricket at school because we had this headmaster, this sports master who was crazy about cricket. And I remember watching the Headingley Test in like 81 with both of them, and the miracle that happened there. And even before that, and just the whiteness of it all, the cricket whites rather than the players, and the greenness and the niceness. And it was the antithesis of my council estate. And I was like, I love this. This is great. And I just became an England cricket fan. And it's like adopting a team like Hibs or Man United. And so I've always supported England, weirdly. And I still to this day, and I've been to Trent Bridge, I've been to Old Trafford, I've been to Lords, I've been all over. I love cricket. I've been to the SCG in Sydney. I mean, I love cricket. I'm a massive fan, but it's just unacceptable.
Quite right.
And so I guess Yorkshire Cricket Club in the bin.
Right. Yorkshire Cricket Club version 2 hopefully will be a hero of the week in 5 years.
Listen, there's a lot of really good people in cricket, and I've met them and really, really great people. And so a lot of them will be really embarrassed and angry about what happened.
Dougray, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed having you on TellyCast. I'm sure our audience would love it as well. And as I say, coming up in the show, we get to chat to Irvine and Richard Tulk-Hart when we spoke to them on set a few weeks ago. Maybe we'll catch a cricket match together at Lord's, Dougray, at some point soon.
Yeah, I love Lord's. I love it. It's great. I love putting a suit on, putting my hat on. It's fantastic.
Take care and good luck with Buccaneer Scotland. And if you want to watch crime, go to BritBox. It's live now, so you can go and watch it there.
Thank you very much, Justin. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of travelling up to Scotland and visiting the set of Crime, where I sat down with Richard Tulk-Hart and Irvine Welsh to talk about how they were bringing Irving's novel to the screen.
I'm here at the home of Greenock Morton FC in Glasgow, on the outskirts of Glasgow, and joined by Irvine Welsh, novelist, and Richard Tulk-Hart, who's one of the CEOs of Buccaneer Media, who are adapting Crime, one of Irving's novels, for TV, for BritBox. How's it going, Richard? How's the production going?
It's gone really well. We're nearly 9 weeks in to a 12-week shoot. Everybody who's filming around these times of COVID is many, many more layers of things that need to be done. But touch wood, we're, as I say, 3/4 of the way through, and we're going along well. It's looking absolutely stunning. So we're really happy.
Fantastic. Irvine, what's the experience of having one of your novels adapted, or you adapting one of your novels for TV?
It's fabulous, but I have to pull you up about kind of Greenock and Glasgow there. You can't say Greenock's in Glasgow. When we make Martin Compson, we'll be going absolutely mental. So they're very much discrete entities. But it's just been fabulous. It's been great. We've just had an absolutely fabulous cast, haven't we? And they've been acting out their skins.
Yeah.
So I'm just so looking forward to seeing this.
Yeah. When it came to casting crime, we know Dougray Scott has been involved as an executive producer and is involved in the very genesis of the project. How did the casting process work for everybody else, Richard? How did that go?
Well, casting processes can be quite tricky, but when you're talking about a book written by this gentleman, and there's a plethora of amazing Scottish actors out there, and your casting agent says, "Would you like to be in an Irvine Welsh adapted book?" You don't struggle to get top talent, and we've proven that with the cast that we've got. In obviously Dougray playing the lead, but Joanna Vanderum, Ken Stott, and John Sims. I mean, you can't ask for more, really.
No, absolutely.
It's and then coming together on screen is just been.
And we've even got my old mate Jamie Sivers from Leith playing Gilman, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. I shouldn't have left him out. Sorry about that.
Again, I don't want to keep pulling you guys up a bit forward.
No. Well, that's it. Well, I apologise to anyone from Greenock and from Glasgow. That's the first out of the box. So the crime itself was mainly set in Miami, wasn't it? But obviously we're filming, and this is set here in Scotland.
Basically, the story that we're filming now was the backstory to the story in Miami, which was Lennox actually broken and trying to sort of find himself and getting involved in all sorts of mad adventures there. The backstory, the story about how he got to that point of craziness, basically, is the story we're telling, and it's about his confrontation with the serial killer. He becomes obsessed with the serial killer, but the serial killer also becomes obsessed with him because he wants someone to tell his story, someone that understands him, and he has this kind of horribly weird and symbiotic relationship with Lennox that kind of unravels right through the season as he's kind of playing cat and mouse with Lennox, and it's quite an interesting, harrowing confrontation that they have.
This is a original production for BritBox. Tell us about what the format is. How many episodes, and do we know if it's going to come out all together, or is it going to be released every week, or is it too early to tell that?
I mean, in terms of how it's going to be released, I think we'll leave BritBox to announce that themselves. Yeah. That's for their plan, and we'll know that soon enough. But 6 1 hours, and the process of working with them has been fantastic. I think they've seen that the talent that there is involved in this, when left to their own devices, can be trusted to deliver what they say they're going to be delivering. And my business partner, Tony Wood, who is a phenomenal producer, has brought this all together with talent like the acting talent that I've just sort of put forward, and then on top of that you've got David Blair and James Strong directing, and what you'll see that they've done is a show that hasn't been seen before, and I think we see crime on TV a lot. It is probably the most watched genre that there is and produced genre that there is, but I think I can hand on heart say that an audience will not have seen this.
And what about filming in Scotland and the Scottish TV industry? Because we know this is an industry full of very talented people, but perhaps hasn't had the support that it might have needed over the years. Was it important to obviously the story's set in Scotland, but
well, I mean, it's almost like whenever you film something in Scotland, the great thing about it is with the crew, you meet all the same people basically, and they're all brilliant, and some fabulous people to work with here, and it's just it's great for me personally. I feel like I can bring projects. I can from train spotting right through to this, and the Acid House and Filth and all. you get to do a project here and you get to work with people down the years, and you do get to know so many talented people. So it's great. It's just great to be able to do this.
Yeah, I should also say a big thank you to Creative Scotland, who have been fantastic as well in helping to bring the show, not just in a financial sense, but in all the support that they've brought. We as a company are certainly planning on doing a lot more up here as well.
Let's not forget that this is a major drama series shot during COVID, under COVID conditions, which must have presented its own challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about what difference producing under COVID means to a regular production?
Well, apart from being a lot more expensive,
yeah,
and it is vastly more expensive,
right,
on a show like this. But again, in the partners that we have in this show, in both BritBox, ITV, and Cineflix, are production partners who are very understanding in the difficulties that we are all facing as an industry and having to go through. The setup under COVID, luckily it's not something I had to get involved in, but the teams of people that are in there and around, making sure that everybody is, first and foremost, everyone's safe. We've got a crew of 90 people and a big cast, so that's the key element. But there's lots of little tricks that we picked up on a show that we produced before this, that we brought over to here. We put in extra layers of safety over and above what we're meant to do and have to do, whether that's for government reasons or insurance reasons. But ultimately the point of spending this extra money is you're keeping people safe, but you're keeping the production going. And to stop production now is a big problem when you're dealing with the talent that we have on this show, because invariably they're going on to something else afterwards. Yeah, it's had its challenges, but it also focuses the mind a bit and makes for a tighter show, I think.
So crime drama is a huge genre that never seems to, stop growing in terms of popularity with audiences. Why is that, Irving? Why is crime drama so enduring?
I think people that always, it's like, I think a lot of straight people really like crime because they don't really get involved in it, and it's something that they know happens, but they don't really want to immerse themselves in that world, kind of wisely. But they're fascinated by it because it's, they know it happens and it's out there somewhere. So it's a way of consuming it in a safe way. It's a way of getting closer to it in a safe way. It's a way of looking at the frailties of humanity without necessarily kind of immersing yourself in that. But again, I would kind of dispute whether this is even strictly crime genre in a sense. It's I see it as being more about people in the modern age at work are trying to get by and trying to rely on each other, and subject to the incredible pressures that we're all under now, this whole kind of existential threat to humanity that we haven't really experienced before in any other era. We now have, and that just adds this kind of layer of psychological pressure on people. And I think it's about people in a very, very extreme situation, a very, very extreme environment, trying to get through and trying to overcome their own demons in order to try to find out what's going on with them.
Now, you've got a Yorkshire writing partner on this, haven't you? Dean Kavanagh, who's...
Yes.
What does Dean bring to the table in terms of a writing partner for Irvine Welsh?
Well, it's quite interesting the way we work together, because when Dean and I write something, whether it's a feature or a TV show, it's like, when we look back on it, it's almost impossible to work out who's written what, or whose idea was what, because it's so organic. The great thing is, for me, having written the book, is that you want to have somebody whose eyes are a little bit distant from the book. You don't want to be myopic about the book. So it's great to have somebody who, Dean, to remind me that we have to do something different. We can't just. There's a lot of great scenes in the book, but sometimes a film script or a TV script just breathes differently. There's things that just work. It's got to work on stage as well as page, basically. We're very tuned in with how each other think about these things, but it's also nice that we can, if one of us is kind of sticking by the book a little bit, or not the actual book, but it gives the other one a chance to go off centre, and we sort of play this good cop, bad cop kind of devil's advocate role with ourselves and with each other. And I think it just adds to that sense that It creates something really good, basically, I think.
So crime's based upon the novel. Can we expect any more novels along this story? Is there any, might there be a further story?
Yeah,
after
I mean,
this?
I've got a Lennox book in the works now that's going to come out probably next year sometime, and it's really a follow-up to what happens in the first crime book, basically. So it's about Lennox back in Edinburgh and a whole new set of circumstances that he has to navigate.
Well, Irvine, Richard, thank you so much for spending some time with us here in Greenock Morton, which is Greenock, not Glasgow, in Scotland. So thank you very much.
Justin.
Thank you.
Well, that's about it for this week's telecast. As always, thanks a lot for listening. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show and share it with friends and colleagues. Or why not follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter. Telecast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in Scotland and London. Until next Thursday, as always, stay safe